Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thanks, Jim.
The BC election has left people wondering what's going on. For those outside of British Columbia, it looks like a minority government with the Liberals with 43 seats, the NDP with 41, the Greens with 3, leaving the Greens in the position of power. However, this is not a final tally. We still have absentee ballots to be counted, and some of the ridings were so close that there will be recounts. So this is not a final standing. In the meantime, if you're in the resource business, you wonder, is it business as usual, or do you have to redo your plans? Stewart, what's your idea on this?
Well, we're going to be in a moment of I guess, hesitation as over the next few days, next 10 days, the absentee ballots are counted, which will give us a definitive idea of what seat allocation is. If you talk to the BC Liberals today, they're saying that there's one seat on Vancouver Island that they're reasonably certain will flip over to the Liberals, making it a tally of 44 for them, which is a majority, a tight majority by one seat, but a majority nevertheless that would give them the ability to operate as a majority as long as they were very disciplined and organized in doing their business. They could make that a go, possibly for 4 years. But if it's a minority situation, then it's a totally different map.
You said in the Comox area, what could influence the outcome there with the absentee ballots? Well,
it's funny. The absentee ballot that is being looked at, which has quite a few votes apparently, is at the Canada Forces base at Comox. And because the BC Liberal is a base commander from CFB Comox, it's thought that his people would be voting for him. And that would take a very, very tight margin, just a handful of ballots separating the NDP current winner from the second place BC Liberal, that could flip it over. So we'll see.
Of course, that depends if the soldiers like their commander or former commander. Now, if you're in the resource industry, and of course, I guess it's business as usual for whatever is working right now, but what could be put on hold because we don't know what's going to happen until these absentee ballots are counted?
Well, there's a great deal of uncertainty because the BC Liberals are a package that we understand pretty well. They've been around for 16 years, and we know where they stand on mining, forestry, oil and gas, transportation of commodities. It's in their record. But the question mark is, what would the Greens do if they hold the balance of power? And, of course, what would the BC NDP do? And when it comes to some of the big decisions, I mean, let's look at what we've got. We've got a number of mines that are being proposed. We've got the approved Pacific Northwest LNG plant in the northwest. We've got the approved wood fiber LNG down near Squamish. There is the approved Kinder Morgan pipeline. And, just today we're getting a statement from Kinder Morgan people. They're saying they continue to move forward with all aspects of planning, and they're working to get their financing and final investment decision in place so they can start building the thing in September, so they can get it in service by late 2019. So their message is we're moving ahead as planned, but they still haven't gotten to that FID stage. Now, when it comes to forestry, anyone who's involved in coastal forestry will be thinking about the log export issue. If the NDP bring their promised changes in, it would probably lead to some sort of change or reduction in the number of logs harvested and shipped out as logs to markets mostly in China. And the contractors who do this work on the island have been saying pretty consistently that that would be a bad thing. So have the major forest companies. So it would limit their choices. It would limit the amount of wood that they can supply to mills as well. They see it as a big negative. When it comes to LNG, we've got the BC NDP saying that they will do 2 reviews, one of the gas extraction process and the other of the royalty structure, what they call subsidies, which are really the policy apparatus in place to encourage natural gas drilling and oil drilling and extraction to occur and occur in certain places. So they want to look into those because they must think there's some issues or problems with how that is set up, which the BC Liberals clearly don't agree with because they're going full on with it. So that's something that would for sure inhibit probably billions of dollars of investment. They would see that as a signal to the market to go and do your business somewhere else. We're not interested in it here, because when you do reviews like that, there's really no guarantee that they would just simply come back and say, well, we're going to tweak a couple of things, otherwise it's fine. The whole point of these reviews from the proponents of them, or some of the proponents of them, is to stop natural gas from being extracted at all. So you have to think that some of the people on these panels would have that perspective and would be working hard to leave it in the ground, as the expression goes. So I think that's going to definitely cause a lot of concern today in Alberta, where most of these decisions are made about placing investment.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after the break.
I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, have you heard anything from people in the resource industries yet about the election result?
Well, I think the big message, notwithstanding that these policies that different parties are offering, may have some negative impacts. I think the big message out there is that it's time for collaboration. We've got to work together. We've got to build a middle ground. And I'm convinced, based on the work I've been doing in the Resource Works project over the past 3 years, that is the way that we have to go. And that means ensuring we've got an agreed fact base of information that we can use to make decisions on, rather than saying, hey, these are my facts and you've got your facts and we don't agree, so too bad. Well, that doesn't really lead to resolution. So finding a common table to come together on these things, I think, and any party that can create that is one that can be successful in ensuring we've got a healthy, growing natural resource economy. You look at the Greens, if they hold the balance of power, the Green Party under Dr. Weaver, I've met with him and he's explained to me the need to not use any oil sands products, to not extract natural gas, because there's, he says, other options. Now, when you look around and say, well, what are those options? A lot of that points to Site C, things like that, electricity, but the Greens don't want Site C either. And the NDP wants to review it. They're saying that 2,000 jobs up there, maybe they could be redeployed and they could build public infrastructure, transit in the Lower Mainland instead of doing that. But when I look at the future of our energy consumption as a society, if we're following the advice of someone like Dr. Weaver and decarbonizing, getting away from fossil fuels, that is, we're going to need electricity that qualifies as being renewable in that it doesn't produce greenhouse gases to make it. And if we're against creating renewable energy from things like Site C, then I'm kind of puzzled as to how we get that electricity for the green future.
Well, if the Greens want to team up with the Liberals, or the Liberals want to bring in the Greens are dead set against just about every Liberal policy. The Liberals, for example, want to limit the tolls on the bridges around Vancouver to $500 a year. The Greens say no, triple them.
Yes, right. So we've got three very different policies there, don't we? Because the NDP, they want to make them just free, so that there's the capital costs are not passed along to the users, which was the idea in setting up that bridge that way. If the Greens say, let's put a tax on it so this infrastructure is not used as much as it is now, because we want to encourage people to use other forms of transit, which currently aren't seemingly enticing the commuter out of his or her car, that's a further investment that has to be made, and that has to be paid for somehow. I think there's still a lot to be worked out, so that those who are making these propositions, which are, from a good place, well-intentioned, but they also have to add up. The math has to add up. We have to be able to pay for them, and there's not as much of an acknowledgement today that the way we pay for things we need comes from the things that we export, the goods and services that we export. And a lot of the goods, 80% of our goods that we export, are from natural resources. And again, it's back to those things we started talking about. How are we going to, pay for the transit if we don't have LNG or other kinds of natural gas products that we can export? If we don't have crude oil exports, which right now is the biggest earner for the nation, it's bigger than auto parts when you consider that crude oil is entirely made in Canada, whereas automobiles, which are a big export, they're made from parts we have to import. So they're not really quite as valuable as they look in terms of creating the ability to pay for our iPhones and orange juice. It's really the natural resources that are so efficient at doing that for us. And we've got all these parties who are saying we can't do that. We can't dig up resources and market them to foreign countries and get foreign exchange. We must stop it. Well, I'd like to hear them say what we're going to stop buying. You never hear them say that, do you, Jim?
Well, I haven't heard them say that.
No.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, with the Greens holding this mysterious hold on power, perhaps in British Columbia, and they're anti-everything, have they thought about, you have to have a transition, at least? You can't go around shutting down stuff immediately?
Yeah, well, I think there's an earnest attempt to create an economic vision, and this is something I've also spoken with Dr. Weaver about. I've heard some of his ideas. I think, they need to develop more so than they can be understood by the ordinary person. Right now, he speaks of a future that will get away from the current economic reality we have and be replaced by one that is even bigger and a creator of more prosperity than the current system, because it's based on renewable energy. And I've been trying to work this out. He told the editorial board at the Vancouver Sun about that. You can go online and read about it. I think it's interesting, but we're a little shy on the details, how you achieve this effect. It's a wonderful, warm vision, but how do we get there? And I think one of the things we can do in Canada is get better in developing clean technology, which is partly about using our existing resources more effectively and with less side effects. And that's something we're very good at in Canada. We've got regulations that force us to do these things. In BC, even though I know that the Greens and the NDP like to knock the carbon tax and the climate change program, you look at all the things that BC's doing compared to what others are doing. We're doing way more than pretty much anywhere else in the world in BC. It really irks me, Jim, to hear BC knocked as not being a climate leader. That's absolute rubbish. We're out there ahead in terms of the incentives for electric vehicles, the work in the upstream oil and gas production to tighten up the system there to cause less methane to escape. We've got just a long list, pages. If you look at all the programs in place that are greening the economy, it runs to pages and pages, all sorts of things. And other people are emulating our model, which of course came in part from leadership that Dr. Andrew Weaver of the Green Party provided to previous BC Liberal government back in the last decade.
So that's good news. In the meantime, we still have to feed our families and, pay our mortgages.
Well, yeah. These platforms, we hear about the need for more spending of money on education, more spending of money on healthcare, more spending on transit. And who's against that? I'm certainly not. And I can't say I've run into people who tell me they're against those things. But all of those things also have to be paid for, and there's no magic money tree. We've got to work hard. We've got to cooperate. We've got to, I think, do the things that we already do well in future. That's just one of those things about life. If you want to be successful, do the things you do well. BC does resources really well. Maybe not perfect. There's examples you can point to where BC has not been perfect in the past. That's for sure. But rather than just simply give up and say we're going to adopt some new economy that no one can really explain to us, why don't we try just keep getting better at the things we do?
Isn't BC viewed by the rest of the world as a green resource extractor?
Well, I would go further. I mean, it's a paradise. It's a paragon of balancing the environment and the economy. And now I know there's a kind of peanut gallery in BC that loves to tell us what destroyers of nature we are, but you look around, we're actually getting cleaner. Our cars are using less fuel. There's less emissions. We've got regulations for protecting waterways. Decades back, I remember when I was young, you'd see some of the clear cuts of forest and what happens to streams. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. We've got way better practices in place for mining as well and protection of the environment. In fact, when you get an incident in mining that makes the news, it's not just remarkable that it's happened, it's that it's so rare. We don't hear about these things, largely because they don't happen, because we've got these regulations. And, anyone who's in the mining business or forestry business or oil and gas will, in a candid moment, probably tell you the burden of regulations that they face. You don't hear people in public bemoaning that because they know it's their job to do it right. But when you look at the paperwork and the bureaucracy that they have to deal with to do a cut block in forestry, to drill a well, to develop a new mine, it's years of work. And we have professionals in DC and trades who are experts in doing this stuff, and they get it done and they satisfy the regulations. It's very quiet. We don't hear about it, but it results in really outstanding and recognized leading practices. That you have foresters. I've recently met a group from Russia of foresters. They came over. They wanted to see how things are done in Canada because it turns out they have a lot they can improve on over there, and they figured BC was a good place to come and get it from. I met with a businessman from Kazakhstan. They want to develop oil and gas, and I said to him, well, just go up to Russia. They'll tell you how to do that. No. I want to come here. You've got the best practices in natural gas extraction. I'm coming here to learn how you do it. There's some companies I was just talking to. They're doing some mining exploration in the south of India. Those are BC companies. There's some companies that are doing natural gas exploration and extraction in the province of China from Alberta. And, we're sending our expertise all over the place because we're the best at it. So I just get so excited about all the innovation. We've done a series at ResourceWorks. It's called Naturally Resourceful. We found so far, we just launched a few weeks ago, we got 5 companies that are doing this kind of stuff internationally. They're global leaders in bringing their brains, not just their brawn, from the resource sector to the world. That's the BC story.
Do we need to hear more about that?
I think we've got to get better about telling the story of what's happening. I think we could have more things happening, that's for sure, but let's also tell the story about what's happening now, because most people, unfortunately, you'll get the impression of you talk to your neighbor who doesn't really have any reason to pay attention to this stuff, and you ask them a few questions or get them talking to their views on how forestry works or mining or oil and gas, and it's pretty common that it doesn't correlate to the information that a professional person working in the field would be able to share with you. It's often very, very different and often a very negative view. And those of us who have had the chance to go and look and talk to the people who are boots on the ground, I think we have an obligation to share what we know, because I'm confident that it's a very good story, that if more people did understand it as we do, they would feel, I think, part of the BC green resource story that is our future.
Stewart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks, Jim.
My guest has been Stewart Muir. He's the executive director of the Resource Works Society, their website, resourceworks.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Any questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.